What you're about to hear is not simply a conversation. This is a decades of lived experience, service, resilience, and heart. I love and respect these men deeply. So please join me in welcoming John Carberry, Brian Symington, our host Rosalind, and our wonderful interpreter Karen.
Okay, I'm not going to say much more by way of introduction. I think James covered everything very well there. Unlike her, I have 45 plus years in the field, and Brian did interview me for my very first job, and I got it. So I've been fortunate to know these guys for as long as ever, and I hope today that you all get a flavour of what they've both achieved individually and together in the disability and deaf rights movement. I don't know if any of you remember the advert for the pink Duracell bunny that used to be, was the advert for Duracell batteries and the pink bunny. Brian was described by a very eminent lawyer as the embodiment of the Duracell bunny. He just keeps going long after others have stopped. And I would say in John, he found his perfect partner, who just recently was described as an inspirational figure in the disability and deaf rights movement. So today you're going to get the abridged version of what these two guys have achieved, and also, I hope, a sense of their passion and their wit. So before I go into discussing the work that you've both done individually and in partnership, I want you both to give the audience a flavour of your personal journeys and how they've shaped you. I'm going to start with you, John. Can you tell us what it was like for you as a child? Becoming deaf, I think, was at the age of 7, and having to move away from your family to school in Dublin. What was that like?
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. I wasn't born deaf. I lost my hearing when I was 5 through meningitis. Before I lost my hearing, I did pretty well in the school. I loved your teacher. I was a bit of a teacher's pet. Well, how could I not be a teacher's pet? Anyway, so when I became ill, and I went back to school pretty quickly, but my family said, no, it's too soon for you, son, you have to wait. So eventually I got back to school, and I remember the first time going back into school, I noticed something was wrong. I felt lost. I became very isolated. I had no connection with my friends in school. I lost everything in school, my education, my academic achievements started to fail, and my parents realised they had to take me out of school. And I was moved to deaf school in Dublin, and I was only 7 years old. I remember my parents taking me by train. I don't know if you remember the time that, trains used to have smoke popping out of them. Steam engines. I used to love the smell, and you could actually open the windows and smell the steam and the smoke. Different in my age. I think he's giving away my age there. No, my age is like that. 21. Anyway, I am 21 plus 1. But anyway, don't worry about that. So I remember riding to school, and I got off, and I ran up the steps, rang the bell, and this big gentleman in black clothing and a white collar came to the door, and I thought, what is he? And then I realised he was a Christian brother. His little collar was quite small, so that's how you knew this was going. So Mom and Dad took us in. We had a conversation. Obviously, I didn't know what was being talked about. I was totally isolated on the information that was going along. And then another gentleman came into the room and took me out. And took me to the ground floor area where there was a lot of other boys. Now, hence it was just a boys' school. They all seemed very happy. And I could see these hands flapping about and doing these strange things. And I thought, what are they doing? I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I didn't know this was actually sign language. And I didn't know they were all deaf. I'm standing, looking, going, what is this? Perhaps maybe I'm deaf too. So it was very, very upsetting for me. Remember, I was only 7 years old. I ran back up the stairs to try and find Mum and Dad. And Mum and Dad weren't there. It was just my case sitting in this big room. They didn't say why I was left, and they went home. And I became a voter. Briefly, I didn't stay too long. When I was 11, I moved to Jordanstown School, which was a massive challenge because everybody in school used different sign language. I was using ISL, and they were using BSL in the north, and it was completely different language. When I finished school, I really wanted to work all I could. I wanted to be a social worker. That was my aim, my ambition. Because I always liked working with people. And secondly, I loved the caring aspect. And thirdly, I never wanted to be sitting in an office. I wanted to be out and about. As you all know, you don't like being in your offices either. You like to be out and about. You know, then even phones a social worker or tries to contact a social worker. You never do anybody. Sorry, they're like, left the office. Oh no, what time are you back? Sorry, I can't tell you that time. Maybe try again tomorrow. So, I would love that kind of job. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to become a social worker. Because, as you know, the training in colleges and university to get your degrees, to get your certificates. In those days, there was no possibility of me getting this because I had no interpreter like Karen here today. I wouldn't have been able to do the lectures. So I gave up. And I went to work in a factory doing sort of cleaning, manual labouring, cleaning toilets. It was very nice, but hey ho, it was money, it was a job. Thankfully, I didn't stay there too long. Until an organisation across the water moved over here called CADP, the Council for Advanced Communication for Deaf People. So I became
Sorry, I'm going to stop you just a minute because I think you're going to give your whole story in one go. And this is supposed to be an interview with two people. I'm going to say this one.
very sorry.
And also, for those of you in the audience who heard him criticising social workers, he's going to be dead outside because he installed a social worker. So.
Oh, no, hold on, I wasn't. Like I said, you know, I said unfortunately I wasn't able to become a social worker, so I actually want to do it, but in that, you know, I'm very proud that my daughter is a social worker. Actually, so I'm really proud of that. Sorry, sorry for interrupting me.
So I'm going to turn on you, Brian. Brian, your childhood obviously was very different. Did you also have connections with the deaf community? Grew up in Belfast. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then tell us a little bit about the path that you down to George Face Street.
Okay. I grew up very close to here, in the Holy Land, so just across the Botanic Gardens. And I was a family of 6, I was number 4. And I think we had an idyllic time during my time in the 50s. With the Botanic Gardens, with the Ulster Museum, with the River Lagan, with the Ormeau Park, Ormeau Revival was just across the bridge. Cinemas, the Polish cinemas just down in the bottom of the Avenue. I lived at the corner of Mountain Court Avenue and Carnage Street. So I really had a really good time. And I was a youngster, to be honest with you. It was sport, it was street games. Because we were allowed to play in the street, there wasn't many cars around that time. And we had to game of wall between 2 game of walls. So we played cricket, we played football. We played, obviously football was a big thing for me and all the other sports. But I also lived close to my grandmother. She only lived about 7 houses up from us on Anticourt Avenue. And she was a real presence in our life because the school was only 150 yards up Anticourt Avenue. You could have called in there at any time, going to school, coming back. And she would have got it, you know, and she was home, but when I get back, but she must have went through. She lost her mother and father by the time she was 8. She lost her husband and a son. This year my mother was married, but I never heard anything about that at all. She was not judgmental and supportive. And I think I was sort of, you know, I was blessed with that. You've also said there just about the connection with the deaf community. I really wasn't at that stage, but we had a neighbour who lived in Hollistown Street, the next street. And I always felt then it seemed to be isolated. We were out with the dog and there weren't many people connected with them at all. Though when I became a social worker, and I came there, social worker, and they're really pleasant people. And then I met a deaf guy who played for a local football team. He was a really good player. So that was really my first connection with a deaf person. And you know this, we are now meeting him. Sean and I are meeting him all these years later, and on a Friday morning. We meet at Waterstone's cafe every Friday morning. So there's different people come in, but he comes in to join us as well. So I mean, I had a really happy childhood, and I just want to say just me one thing. I had a brother, my eldest brother, and this is something I always remember. You will not remember, there was a bread strike here, and it was obviously very serious. But my brother, he was young, got a van, went down over the border to the dog, brought the bread back, went to the second our house, and was sitting there. The bread was from the floor up that scene. We came up from it. We were coming from the markets, from Sandy Row, from East Mills Farms. It was so, but oh, it was a really good time.
As your football.
Right, well, the other thing was obviously I was played football all the time. I was able to play in the street in the Atomic Gardens and so on. And then I went to high school, which was the football academy really at that time. And I was in the running for the various schoolboy international team. And I went to the stand-up trial the day after St. Patrick's Day, and I had played in a Schools Cup final at St. Patrick's Day and hadn't played well at all. The ground was frosty and the wind was coming down, it fell. But anyway, I went home and I was sitting on the line up to one tomorrow. It's a tiny chance to say, you are going, and I did. But there was this other guy that came, and we hadn't seen him much before, a bit fed against him. And anyway, when I was going for the probables and he was going for the positives, and when the team was selected, the team players were selected, I was selected, and George wasn't. But I've read his book, Blessed, and it says he was absolutely devastated. But the interesting thing was, about a month or two later, he went to Manchester United. Will I score with them? Yes, definitely. So but then again, I suppose just to say that a number of clubs came in for me. One of the clubs, hard to believe, in early 60s, the PSV Eindhoven from the Netherlands invited me to go, and I didn't go because it seemed so far away. And I couldn't speak Dutch, and I said before maybe double Dutch, but I didn't go in the end. I mean, Burnley and other clubs came in for me, but I was in Placey. I went to Brighton, and I really enjoyed it really because we were playing against Spurs and West Ham, Arsenal, and the London clubs. But I had the newspaper, somebody interviewed me, and I came home and then the headline was 7 Funnies I wanted to watch. You know the way they build up changed a bit that time. Anyway, about a week or two after that, I got a very serious interview. The goalkeeper was running out at full speed, and I was running at full speed in the opposite direction. Straight into me, really. So that cost them was out of. So it finished me as it's only about coming up the 18th, so it finished my career in protection group. I didn't get any help until I came back, any medical help, coming back to Belfast. But the other thing was, it's an interesting was that after that, right, somebody comes along to about 4 months later, there was a headline in the paper that said, best in name, best in action. You compared our two careers up to that stage. He went on to play World Star, Man United, and I was forgotten. But I'll tell you this, I've never regretted I had that opportunity, and the opportunity I got later in life, if that had happened when I was about 27, 28, what would I have done? And none of that, you may have been playing second or third division, and you may not have been, you may not have been happy with it. You don't realise just how competitive that isn't football. But yes, I enjoyed that time I had there, and it changed my career.
Somebody told me that these two boys are like herding cats, and they couldn't be more right, because we didn't have a chance to rehearse any of this, but they did get questions in kind of areas they're supposed to cover. But you know what?
Sorry.
Anyway.
Sorry.
I was going to say, Brian, what I wanted to make sure everybody heard was that football's loss was our game. That's the point, and that I think from our perspective, it was very important and the right direction, and maybe that was meant to happen. Probably not what you thought at the time. So you and Dawn came back, went to work in Jordanstown and were instrumental in setting up services, and some of us in the room will remember Beachbank House, and I want you to talk a little bit about setting up sensory support services in Beachbank House, and probably what we would all say is maybe your legacy.
Well,
I'll give you the mic.
well, I think after the last question, I'm trying to keep this breathing. I mean, that was it. I went down to Jordanstown Street. A friend brought me down, and I started to work voluntary with blind children. And the principal at that time, Mr. Brian Symington, Denmark, who was a brother of Joe in Denmark, but that's the service for deaf people. And he asked me to go on to the staff and to work particularly with the deaf children. And in those days, I was 21, and that's the way it was. We're sure it's were residential. But I had a brilliant time there. I learned so much about the needs of deaf children in particular, coming away from home, as John had already said, and that issues with communication because we're an oral system. So they weren't really, their language wasn't really acknowledged. And it's only coming up today where that has been more and more acknowledged and been used in schools. So the interesting thing was, I was only in post about 3 months. I felt I'd been happy to write a letter to the English FA, and there was a time that England were World Cup holders. And I sent a letter, I didn't say many, but the next thing was a phone call from the headmaster. They said they were coming. After all, France and the team were coming to Jordan's house. So interesting. I had to go to the hotel at York Street train station. They were staying at that time. I remember going to this mini bus, yellow and Lake George took Street for David But they pick up with all these stars for their playing, and they were preparing to play in the World Cup in 1970. And anyway, we brought them up to the school, and it was a great day for the children. People like Sir Jeff were encouraged to be in with them. But those were the opportunities we got, and bringing people in and trying to give experiences for the children. But the one thing it did for me, it divided the rest of my career of my life. That was important for me.
Please, sorry. What you did then was you went to work in Baddies. I have to remember. You went to work in was then South Belfast Trust. He led sensory support services. He appointed me, so he was my very first manager. And John then joined us. John talked earlier about CACDP, but John then joined us in Beachbank House for a while and had an office down the back. It was an absolute torture, had a lot of biscuits, etc. But John, do you want to tell us a wee bit about your work in promoting deaf awareness? I mean, a lot of people will know you through promoting deaf awareness, and Jane talked about sign language training. So can you tell us about that and the advocacy that you've done for interpreting, sign language interpreting?
Okay. My first love is actually working with people like yourselves. But also my love is breaking down barriers. Always wanted to do this.
To be seen,
I want deaf people to be seen,
to be part of the
to be
society.
part of society.
I'm going to hate
I don't like people to be unseen and be invisible. So I have been training a training officer for many years, working in CACP, and also I worked for the Royal National Institute of the Deaf as well. And that was one of the biggest deaf organisations. I worked for them for about roughly 24 years, and Brian happened to be one of our directors. He was our director there as well. And Brian decided it was time to leave the organisation, as in the RNAD. It didn't take me too long to go with it. I decided that I didn't want to be there anymore. When you think of 24 years working with the same organisation, sometimes it's just a wee bit too long. So I thought I needed a refreshment. Obviously, you can all see me here. What am I? I'm a deaf person. I'm like an orange sugar. That's me. I'm a dead orange sugar.
Your own boss.
I'm my own boss.
don't have
I
anybody
don't have
teaching me.
anybody to answer
Privacy.
to. It's just me.
One be bad for
If
myself.
I work for myself,
Nobody
I
else.
do it. Nobody else is for me.
I love this.
So my love is teaching. Teaching sign language, teaching deaf awareness, bringing in sign language to the world of hearing people, and breaking down those barriers to make everything more acceptable, not just for deaf people, but for hearing people as well in society.
Thanks, John. And Brian, today we're at a research conference. We're celebrating research and good practice. And I suppose from your perspective, would you have any key messages maybe you would like to give us, the audience here today, that could shape research?
I think. I just want to say, never undervalue the impact of research in terms of service development and policy. And in terms of, I think I just want to read in terms of the work that we were doing when I was director at RNAD, and we had this evaluation from the Department of Health and Social Services between 1970 and 2000. So I hope this helps and reinforces the importance of research.
Brian, stop.
Take a read.
Swap.
And it said this, RNAD continue to develop a wide range of sustainable, high-quality service provision alongside innovative project development. All of this development is based on the needs of deaf and hard-of-hearing people that are identified through research. A focus for RNAD on campaigning activity also ensures that the needs of people who are deaf or hard-of-hearing are heard at political level in wider society. So I think it reinforces the importance of research. Definitely, we had to research things in terms of our development, and people like that Madrid was really, really helpful to me really when we were at Eastern Board. We did a number of reports, and I think I just want to throw this one in, and we did a report on interpreting interpret the Northern Ireland, interpreting for deaf service users and the Northern Ireland context. And as a result of that, the interpreting service was set up. It was when I moved to RNAD, and we got about a few thousand grant to actually coordinate it. The other thing it did was it separated social work and interpreting role, and that was very, very important. I don't think we really felt comfortable being a social worker and any of you are going to court to sign and interpret for a deaf person or whatever. So that was important, and obviously that was the first step in developing interpreting services in Northern Ireland. So research is important. I brought a group today it's just focus Forces for Good, and it was a very important book for me because it was really extensively researched, and it demonstrated in the way that the 12 of the most impactful not-for-profit organizations in America worked on, and it was things like services and advocate collaboration and so on. But I'm not going to talk about that now, but that was an important book for me today. So I just want to make it clear. Research is very, very important.
Thank you. And the other thing that underpins a lot of what we do, we've talked about today as well, is leadership. John, I'm going to ask you, I mean, obviously people would describe Brian, all the work he's done over the years, as somebody who's very compassionate. I mean, certainly I would say he shaped my leadership skills from, as a trainee social worker, and I would say there were many who came before me and after me that he had a big influence on. How would you describe Brian as a leader, John?
It's a tough question. But easy answer.
How easy answer?
He, to me,
Okay,
he's a man.
John
Man
is saying
on
that
there.
obviously Brian is a man on fire.
never stops.
He never
Works.
stops working.
Work.
He just works hard.
Heart of gold.
He has heart of gold,
The deaf community.
especially in the deaf community.
Many deaf people
Also,
in the world.
many deaf people in the north and some of the south know Brian Symington. He is so well known.
But close.
He's very close. He's like a deaf family.
Heart of gold.
As mentioned, his heart of gold, his heart on fire.
He's like
He's
a
like
second brother to
a
me.
second brother to
I
myself.
have only one
I
brother.
don't have one brother,
Him.
so
A
he would be
second
my second
brother.
brother.
Cooking me.
Because
the
we
bread
meet
and
every
the
Friday.
milk.
We have like our little hub in
Our
Marshall's.
sons be talking about
And we
towards
talk about
a lot of
we
things,
talk
but
about
they're good.
absolutely everything, and especially deaf work,
Deaf
deaf
race.
campaigns, deaf
Everything.
rights, absolutely everything to do with deafness.
He's one of us.
And he is one of us, and I'm very proud to say that, and I'm very proud to have Brian as a friend and part of my life for many, many years.
That's lovely. We're getting near the end of our chat, boys, but before we do, I suppose, Brian, I want to ask you first of all if you would tell us. Someone asked this morning at one of the breakout sessions. I was like, what would you say? Well, they talked about legacy. I would say, what would you put down as your biggest achievement?
To be honest, I've just been blessed in terms of the event calendar and the opportunities I've got. But suppose the biggest thing for me when I left the RMAD and I was doing a wee bit of part-time work, I enjoyed this to come back to this, was the 6th World Congress in Mental Health and Deafness, which was hosted here. This is the first time I've been back since 2014. And I remember I was honorary secretary of the European Society of Mental Health and Deafness. And then went to Lisbon, Portugal, to make a bid for the World Congress to be hosted here. And to my surprise, we won that bid. But then, one of the cadres from the Netherlands said to me, "Are you prepared to sell your house if you can't raise the money for this conference?" So it certainly was very challenging. And I did come back. I had no organisation, and no funding. But I was blessed because I think people believed in what I was trying to do, and we got funding from the Department of Communities, the Department of Health and Social Services, from the private sector, and obviously with FAFE. We had over 300 delegates came from five continents to this building here. And looking back, suppose I just come from down the road here, or stone's throw from here. But the main thing for me was, our theme was Pathways to Rights, and at the end of it, we had the Belfast Statement on Mental Health and Deafness. It was deaf-led, and I was determined it was going to be deaf-led. And the interesting thing now is that is internationally accepted, and that gave me a bit of satisfaction, really, just as well. But we did raise the money, and actually we ended up with surplus. I mean, it cost over £100,000 because one of the big issues was interpreting. Because you've been interpreting from all these different countries. You had 3 days here, you had pre-conference, you had post-conference. So it just shows you when you're thrown in a challenge, and if people believe in what you're doing, they will come along with you.
Thanks, Brian. I think the point you made was not, about raising money. I think people believe in you, how much you could achieve, and that's why you raised money. So,
Just one thing I want to say here, really, there's a couple of psychiatrists at the end of the conference that commented. She said it was the best conference I've ever attended from start to finish, and I think that really elated me and was satisfying. Sorry for that.
I think I'm with you. We'll take that. That's a good response today as well.
Sorry.
And John, Ian talked about this, but yes, I mean, I've said we have Jane talked about this. We have a film star in the room, folks. We had coffee in Waterstones a couple of weeks ago, and people were coming up to him, and he will sign autographs if you want. But John, tell us a little bit about it. Required Love.
Okay. Bulldog.
Okay, that's all
What
right.
about that?
Right that one.
Right, privilege.
I'll take that.
Be part of
I am privileged, honestly, to be called a film star and be part of the film we have
Don't you
produced.
Great mate.
It was created maybe over a 2-year period.
Regarding my
And it's
relationship.
regarding my relationship with my wife.
To the percent.
Coming from two sides of the community. I'm from West Belfast and my wife grew up from the Moon Mountains in Central Valley. So we met in school. We were there for years and years and years.
Film and a half.
And the film, half of it had stopped, unfortunately, because my wife developed breast cancer. So it had to take a bit of time to sort of try and fit in the film and all of the sciences treatment. It became very, very popular throughout the world. It's been shown in America, it's been shown in Austria, it's been shown in New Zealand, all over here in Northern Ireland and South of Ireland. So it is a maybe, to be honest. For those who has not seen it,
Could be showing
it
hopefully.
is going to be shown in September on T4, sorry, TG4. So that's going to be shown hopefully in September. But I also think it's going to be shown in different cinemas around Northern Ireland. It's been shown in small community cinemas, and hopefully it's going to be shown in big screens.
Screech. People walking at me.
People often ask me,
What?
I have no regret for
You need to see my eyes.
Seriously, you need to see my
My
agent,
eyes.
Brian. You have to see Brian first.
Yeah, there.
He'll deal with all the royalties.
I've been tweeted them.
No, but I really love doing it, and this is brilliant. But it's a must for everybody to see. It's a real tearjerker. Please don't miss it if you can go and see it.
And John, I have to say, definitely go and see it. It is just an amazing film. And not just in the context of seeing a film, but it has done so much for the deaf community in Northern Ireland. It has just highlighted the importance of communication, the importance of inclusion, the importance of connectivity. So definitely, if you get the chance, go and see it. So I think we're coming to an end. There'll be much on the blade here throughout all this to see at what stage. I thought Davy Hayes was going to be giving me the nod too. But I just want to thank both of you, John and Brian, for coming here today. I think it's been an honour for me at this stage. I mean, to think that I started my career with this man beside me, and one of the last things I do is I bow out of social work is to end sitting on the stage with you beside me. So that's been an absolute joy. And also a very kind thank you to Karen, who's been sitting here at the front. I don't know if you've been able to see her, but believe you me, the skills of an interpreter are just amazing. So thank you all very much and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.